session. Welcome everyone. We see some people coming in as well. We'll be promoting some of you to panelists so you can join us in the main room with your camera if you wish to do so. So we'll do that all in a second. So welcome. We're super excited that you have joined us. I know that some of you, I see names that I've seen all throughout the week that have been attending some of the beautiful and powerful sessions that some of the people in our community have delivered this week and continue to deliver. Also tomorrow, there are beautiful sessions scheduled as well. Yeah, and so I guess tonight is another opportunity to share, to exchange, to be inspired by stories. It feels like a storytelling week and there's so much that we can learn from each other's stories and just listening to them and be inspired by them and hear the lessons or the insights or the struggles and just giving space to honor some of that and to give it voice. And so tonight, yes, we are women sharing stories, but they're not just stories of women, right? They're just life stories. They're people stories. So much that we can relate to. And so what we kind of imagined this space to be tonight was as if we're sitting around a table or a bonfire or a happy place and just having a chat, right? And I'm so happy to be sharing this space with all of you and also with Jackie, Leah, and Nature, who will be joining us tonight. And we get to hear some of their stories tonight. Jackie and Leah and Nature are friends, first and foremost, and also my partners in Haraya Coaching and the team also behind CMA Philippines. So we're really happy to share this space with all of you. And so the four of us really get to play in our business. We can bring our visions, our hearts, and our souls together and play and co-create and be on a very purposeful mission together. And we hope to also just bring some of that journeying that we've done over the last 8 years now that we're a team and together as well. And so, yeah, so it'll be a co-created process. We'll see where it takes us. We'll invite also some of you to share when you feel called to do so. Please do. We want to bring voices into the space other than our own, and that will provide for opportunity as well for that. Wonderful. And so, yeah, if Leah and Jackie and Nature can just help move people in, then that would be great.
Yeah, I'm moving them in.
Wonderful. Great. So how did this topic come about? We've called this session The Stories of Unbecoming. And I think in the last year, this word has really taken some form of important role or resonance in our journey as individuals and also as a business that the four of us work in. And I remember, and this was still pre-pandemic, when we were still traveling to clients in our car outside of town, going there. And so Jackie and I were on a journey to a client stuck in traffic. And those are always the best moments with our team because we get to have chats and talks and have a sort of a stream of consciousness about just pondering about life and making our beliefs and our values sort of come to life and how we want to go and do that. So it's a very creative space. And so we started suddenly this chat around, what do we actually stand for as coaches? What do we believe in? What do we want to bring into the world through our business? And when we say that people are whole and resourceful, what does that mean, right? And how do we bring that, how do we make that come alive through the work that we do? And so, and we got to talking, I don't know if you remember that, Jackie, but it went all over the place. And it was kind of like, when we're so focused on coaching and coaching the goal or coaching our best self and pushing people to their greatness, right? Are we really honoring this wholeness piece as well, right? And this piece of being already resourceful and whole and absolutely beautiful as you are now, right? And while having that pursuing and valuing that goal and becoming better is very important in coaching, we sort of started thinking about how equally important it is to honor the other side of that journey, right? To honor the remembering, the coming back, like the returning home, you know, that feeling when suddenly you've returned home to true essence or true nature. And so, you know, the honoring who we are to begin with, and sometimes that gets clouded, right? And so, you know, without talking and going into very cognitive definitions of what we're going to talk about tonight, we thought this quote really kind of encapsulate the essence of this unbecoming that we speak about, right? And you might have seen it. Maybe the journey isn't so much about becoming anything. Maybe it's about unbecoming everything that isn't really you, right? And so when I heard this a couple of years ago, it sort of makes sense, but it didn't really, and it's starting to make sense more and more and more as to what that means. And that's where we're going to begin tonight, right? If we talk about unbecoming, what then have we become? Actually, what are we unbecoming here, right? And where do our stories start? In order to unbecome, we must have become something, if that makes sense, right? We must have pursued this becoming. And so that's what we're going to begin. And when we throw out these questions, we invite you also to ponder about your own journey and how it resonates for yourself. And our stories are just a piece of sharing around it, right? Beautiful. So let me just throw that out, right? What do we mean by becoming, and where do our stories begin, you know, in this process of unbecoming? And I just want to, I'll just start inviting Jackie, Leah, and Nature to share, and then maybe some of you also feel called to share. Yeah, so Jax, where do you want us to bring us into your story here, into our journey?
Yeah, so where does the story begin, right? And I think because the theme we had for this month, this week, is around being a woman, and I thought maybe I'd start with where did the story begin as a girl, in my younger years. It's not that far from today. So I guess my story begins with I have a very close-knit family. I have two older brothers and a younger sister. So I'm the eldest girl, and my brothers are 2 years and 4 years older than me. One of my earliest memories in childhood is thinking, how great would it be to be a boy? That's what I remember distinctly thinking. Well, I want to be like them, because they were my references, right? They were my kind of role models, and they had cool toys. They had, fun activities that they would do together, and I was included. So I thought if I could be more like them, then maybe I would be more included. I would be part of the group, so to speak. And so that's one of my earliest memories. I remember even going to the toilet and standing up to pee. I mean, that's the extent that it took me. And then, of course, growing up, there are certain roles that seemed to be very different for me and my brothers. And this was already when my sister had come in. She's 4 years younger. So there seemed to be different roles that we were expected to play. My dad was very active in business, and I remember he would host a lot of get-togethers with other people that he had business with, and my sister and I would be expected to entertain. Right? My brothers were in their rooms with their books, and that was fine. But we were expected to do the entertaining and to make sure people were comfortable. And those of you who know me would know that I love to host at home, and I love this is part of what I do today. I love having people at home and having people around all the time, and that's probably where it came from, where it began. Right, so some of these things, I guess, in my becoming of who I am today, I have kept, and I guess we'll talk about that in a little while also. I have kept as part of who I am. Some of them I have started to over the years kind of said, well, maybe this isn't necessarily who I need to be or who I want to be, and hence this unbecoming. Right. Fast forward to I worked in for a number of years in corporate, and also in that space there were expectations around how you needed to behave in order to succeed in that world. When I started in corporate, you would hear very often people say emotions are not allowed in the workplace. You check that at the door. You don't bring that to the workplace, right? You are strong and you are stern, and you cannot show weakness. That was how I grew up in my first number of years in corporate. So that's also something that kind of got ingrained as I moved up. Again, much of that I needed to unlearn. And especially now, when we do our work in Haraya, emotions are a huge part of our meetings. In fact, right? We've now learned to, at the end of every decision, ask ourselves, well, how do we feel about that? And I would never have thought to have those kinds of questions asked way back when, right? So I know that that's a lot already to kind of put together, but that's where my story started. And I guess a large part of that either I've shed or not today.
Yeah, and I think you're also saying a really important part of some of it shedding, but some of it actually honoring and keeping it.
Yes,
too,
yes,
right?
absolutely. Yeah.
Being formative in what you're experiencing now, right? I also hear, Jax, a lot of it from what you were sharing is also beliefs and constructs that come into play on how we might have to behave, or what's happening with that, right?
Yeah. Expectations, right? Norms that we grew up with.
Yeah, we all have our own set of that, I think,
Right?
as well, right? Yeah. Beautiful. So that's where your journey starts here. Nature, what about you?
Yeah, so I guess if I go back to as a young child, I'm the eldest of five Jacks. So eldest of five, and the next one after me is about 5.5 years younger. The one after that is 12 years younger, and then 15, and then 22. So my youngest brother is as old as my son. So I think growing up for me, what has been part of my becoming is really becoming very responsible. So that's one. You have duties as in the Philippines, we usually say ate or kuya, and I was the big sister, so that's ate. I have duties as an ate. A lot of sacrifices where my younger siblings needed to come first before my own needs. And that's been deeply ingrained in me too. The other part of that, of becoming for me, which continues to play a big part of my life, is independence. So that was deeply like conditioned in me, to be able to do things on my own, because there was not much to get from help, Leah, Jackson, Cecilia, and guys, right? So they were much younger than I was, and my parents were both working, and And my dad had some notions also in his own good intended ways to make sure I was well-rounded. So if there was support for us, meaning we had people in the house who helped us with the things to get things moving along, we had household staff, they would be sent home during my summer break so that I can take over some more and really do chores. And for him, that was part of the training. So mopping and polishing the garage floors, washing soiled diapers of my younger siblings, you know. And he wanted me to go through that process because he believed that will make me independent and also accepted and desired. And so I understand that, but then later on, I had to unlearn some of these things, particularly, and later on, we'll talk a little bit about that, getting support and asking for help. Because that has become kind of like part of the You're Strong package. And of course, over the years, being in a career, carrying those values of independence and, you know, I can do this much better if I just did it by myself. Expedience and all that kind of exacerbated that experience. So there was really a lot to unlearn. And while it served its function of me taking care of my family, the duty is there and the responsibility. There is a portion that also needed to be shed for my own soul care. And so maybe later on we can speak a little bit about that. But that's what I was continuing to become at that stage of my life.
It's like big values come into play when we grow up, right? And they form our who we become and how we view the world or how we even do certain things, right? And some of them from both your stories now, though, Jackson, Leah, Jackson, Nature, I do hear that they become a strength, though. They become a strength in certain areas of our life. And at the same time, you've already alluded to some of it also needed to be let go of somehow or ease, give it ease, no? Yeah. Yeah, I invite everyone also in the room to think about what were those real values that you grew up with that are now strengths and the way that we do things. At the same time, also maybe get in the way at times. Leah, would you also like to share?
Yes, thank you, Cecilia. Yeah, it's interesting to listen to Nature and Jackie in the sense that, you know, I'm connected with them in some ways, in some forms, because for Jackie, she wanted to become a boy when she was, you know, when she was young. But my story will be the other way around. So I grew up with all girl siblings. So we are all girls in the family. Well, except for my dad, of course. I am the second to the last child. I have a 5 years gap from the youngest sibling. So my parents, especially my father, so just imagine that, who I am sure was hoping for a boy. Because I was already the third one then. Actually, in effect, I will be the fourth one because we have a eldest one who, well, unfortunately, she passed away when she turned 1 year old. So I didn't get to see her anymore. So again, going back to my father, hoping that there will be a boy and thinking that I will be the last child. So just imagine that I became my daddy's girl boy. That's my term. I became the girl boy. So I don't want to be a boy, definitely. So I remember I would, you know, it's so difficult whenever they will bring me to go for a haircut. And they would want my hair to really, you know, really like boys cut. And I hate that. And maybe now, no, Cecilia, Jackie, Nature, that's also reason why that I never recall, you know, cutting my hair that short anymore, because maybe that was imprinted in me that I don't want a short hair. But what did I learn from that? Because since I became my daddy's girl boy, my father instilled in me to be tough and self-sufficient. So it's more of, you know, relying on yourself, not to depend on other people. So that's what I learned from my dad. But on one hand, I also grew up knowing that I'm not a favored child by my mother. So that's the, you know, it's kind of, that's my sad part of my story. Because the only reason I knew then and now was that when she was, she was, how do you say it? She was carrying me in her womb and finally gave birth to me. She developed diabetes then. And she had to bear, with the side effects of the illness and medication. That's the only thing I knew, because in fact, it's kind of hurting still, no? But during the time, it was, it's definitely, it's more painful to hear example, my aunt or my relative to tell me that, yeah, you are not a favorite child because so and so, even my relative would tell me that. So growing up with my mom, then I realized that I start to become like achiever, because I think probably I want to gain favor and not to be a further burden to my mom. So that's that impact on me. I want to prove myself. I will be an achiever. So I became an achiever. So come to think of it, seems like I grew up as a strong person, which I carried through my personal and professional life. So that, of course, that manifested as well in school, in my corporate life. And now I'm sure Cecilia, Jackie, and Nature, you're seeing that in me, that, I don't typically, because I realized then that those strengths, the strength of being, how do you say it, being tough, being self-sufficient, independent, and that achiever thing, also, became like a weakness for me. Because my being tough, self-sufficient, yeah, it made me independent and responsible, yet it became difficult for me to ask for help and say no. So that's what I'm seeing, at times. And my being an achiever turned to, I feared, the thought of failure. I feared the thought of rejection, the feeling of never, enough. And at times, you internally or silently, you are seeking validation and you're seeking recognition. I think that's the, the spectrum, that will be the extreme of, becoming an achiever. So that's what I became. And, I know these are the things that slowly I'm trying to unbecome as well. And yeah, so that will be my story. So there, Cecilia.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you all for just giving us a glimpse as where this begins, right? Or some of the things that form this kind of state. And then we try and unbecome it as we grow up, or we come up against situations where suddenly it's a challenge, or it's difficult for us, right? And now what? The thing that I believed or who I was, something needs to shift and change there. And that can be really confronting, right? I saw a lot of people nodding also as people were sharing. Does anyone already feel called to sort of jump in here before we go to the big main question for today? Yeah. I'm sure everyone's thinking about their own journeys or their own stories as well. Yeah.
It does make you reflect, though.
It does.
One of the things that I heard that was kind of common across our stories so far is this. Some of these we kind of resisted. You have a sense of there are some things about my childhood that I resisted, that I didn't really feel like, this doesn't feel like me, right? And you kind of know that almost intuitively, and then others that you gravitate more towards because that felt more natural. And then there are also these other pieces that you never would have expected to become a part of you, and yet you look back and you realize, oh, well, yeah, that actually became a huge part of who I am today, and it's a good part. Yeah.
It's that realization of this is a good part of me, right? And so, and this is also a question for everyone else, right? So what does unbecoming mean then to each of you? What does it mean to unbecome, and what does that word mean for your journey? And all that Jackie, Nature, Leah, whoever feels called to share first. Jax, you want to go? Yeah.
Sure. when we started talking about this word unbecoming, Cecilia, I do remember that conversation in the car on the way to the client. That's the blessing of traffic. It was, it felt like there were some things we knew intuitively about the work we do and how we're able to help and support. And then a large part of that also was coming from our own experiences and our own kind of discoveries. So I think that we had that conversation after, it was after my diagnosis. Yeah. So just for everybody else in the room, I was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2018. And so a lot of my thinking time and reflection time on who I've become, what am I becoming, who do I need to unbecome, I think a lot of it really began in that period. And really the biggest realizations came from there. And so there's a huge blessing that I attach to that time of my life, in fact. So I'm a huge extrovert, as you might have imagined from my earlier story, right? And in those moments when I had to go through treatment and stay at home, nobody was home because my kids were at school, my husband was at work. I was left with my own thoughts and my own kind of reflections, right? In Filipino, they call that muni-muni. So I had time to dig deep into and introspect on my life and where I had been taking it so far. So unbecoming for me meant this idea of these difficult moments really becoming a prompt for the opportunity for deciding. And I think that was the big word for me. It was deciding, this is who I want to be, this is who I don't want to be, and being very, very comfortable with that, right? Because you're faced with some very difficult moments, you suddenly gain perspective of what's important, what's not important. And if I can go through this, then I can probably go through a lot more. That sort of thinking. So it did prompt a lot of the beginning stages of who I was comfortable being. Even the idea of the role that we play in our lives became much clearer for me at the time.
It's almost like you speak a little bit to the beauty of suffering in a way, or of pain, right? And what's available for us there to mine and learn about ourselves and accept or not accept in a way. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you, Jackie. Leia or Nature, what does unbecoming mean to you? And I'll invite some other people as well in a minute. Yeah.
Leia, I can go? Yeah, okay. Yeah, so this one I think is kind of similar. So prior the start of pandemic, I had, and I think I've shared to a number of my fellow coaches here in CMA. I had my own version of pandemic. So it's also a health crisis because that time we just came back then we had a great year in 2019 and we treated ourselves. So we had that first time planning out of the country. So we went to Bali and we even attended that CMA mastery class. So everything is going well, and I can clearly remember how beautiful, that period then. So then again, when we came back, so who would have thought, I felt something, there's something in my body then that prompted me, okay, maybe it's time for me to go for that, standard medical check routine. So, but it turned out that the thing that I'm feeling that time was not the major concern. So I asked myself, who would have thought then, no, a typical medical, check routine would become a life-changing event for me. So in my case, they found a malignant cyst on my kidney, and the final diagnosis was I had a renal carcinoma stage 1. So just imagine me right earlier, I was sharing with you that strength in me in being an achiever, independent, self-sufficient. Then all of a sudden that crumbled. I was so afraid, and a lot of disempowering thoughts came up. So my strength of being tough, independent, achiever turned against me because I became so afraid. There was a point there that I felt that I failed myself. Just imagine that, because the achiever in me, it says that, how come you got sick, Leah? Where did you get this? I was really in denial. In my mind, I was even postponing, because the only instruction then was, you have to undergo surgery. And even surgery, that's not a word for me, because I'm so afraid of knife, and I'm not doing anything on my body, anything that's is kind of invasive for me. So and that sense of not being in control, because the doctors, I think 3 doctors, I went to 3 doctors, and the 3 doctors really tell me that just the only way, Leah, you have to undergo surgery, and that's the cure. You have it removed. Okay, so then that the unbecoming part for me, that experience taught me to let go. Then I learned how to ask for help, because the time I feel that I can do this, I'm on my own, Leah, you're self-sufficient, you're tough, but in reality I was not. Then I learned to become more vulnerable. I even remember having a heart-to-heart talk with my husband. This is the funny part now, looking back, that I had to endorse to him. In the control freak in me even had the opportunity for me to prepare. I arranged all the document, the insurance of the family, important, like the passbook, the bank account. I gave my passcode. I have this ATM. I even gave my passcode. So everything, my credit cards. I turned it over to him, and I gave him an instruction. Oh, this is the stuff that you need to know. And because I really don't know, because I'm afraid of surgery. Maybe for some of you, surgery is, Leah, surgery is surgery. But for me, that time, I cannot understand. I have the fear in me that, what if I'm not able to wake up anymore? Because they said you will be put, under general anesthesia. So I was really afraid then. But, it gave me comfort. The control freak in me was addressed by that, being able to endorse to my husband. But, I think the biggest learning there as well is to learn, I said here, learn to unsee to see. It's really shifting perspective, because I was too focused then on what I will be missing or losing. Because the time I was even, I did not know the time that, pandemic will break that time. But I was enjoying, going out of the country. I was leading pilgrimages then. So even that, I had to think about that. Hey, what will I be missing because I have this, sickness? That, in the process, I lost sight already of what was still there, which it's kind of, it pulled me back to the basic, and what's really bad, what's the most important in life, which is my faith, my family, and definitely my Haraya family. Because I learned to to just express my fear, just express what's happening in me, helping me understand what am I going through during that point in my life. Yeah, so that's my unbecoming, learning to let go, and learning to just really appreciate whatever, what's really more important, in life at that point. Yeah, so that's for me, Cecilia, Jackie, and Nature.
It's almost like being stripped back, right? Back to
Yeah.
essence, or back to what's important. And Leah and Jax, also in your sharing, I hear it's almost like the strength or the value you were carrying that was so dearly important, or something that drove you forward. It's almost like you had to become familiar with its opposite energy in a way, right? It the other side of that coin, the duality between like the becoming and then the unbecoming, and what that brings as well, right? Yeah, that's what that brought up for me, that we suddenly have access to these different sources of energy and ways of being suddenly, right? Through just being stopped in your tracks from both your stories. You know? Yeah, what about you, Nate?
I think for me, unbecoming is really a practice of trust. It's setting aside my best laid self, my best laid plans, and allowing something else to emerge. Um, and really just sharing the empathy that I get for Jackie and for Leah is my story is somewhat similar. I also went through cancer, but I was only 24 then. And that meant that was at the start in the kind of like the beginning phase of a career where I was feeling like I had so much to give. I was starting to play the role that was expected of me. I was doing all the things that I had to do, and I was gonna get with the program, study for 2 years, take up a master's degree, get into the program of what I had been kind of like, not explicitly, but kind of implicitly conditioned to do, and then that happened, and I had a 2-year-old kid in tow, and a very tumultuous personal life, personal marital tragic stuff going on, and that was very early on, and suddenly for all the things where I needed to be independent, strong, and I'm a planner, so that's my role in Haraya, is to help with the planning and the strategizing. And remember, guys, this year it's called unplanning, and it was intentionally called unplanning because it speaks to that portion where there was a time in my life, and perhaps there will be more, where I need to park those best laid plans because that's not the plan, and that's not the only thing I meant to become. And for me, that is the unbecoming. But at the heart of that is, and I share these personal pieces because at the heart of that is trust in a kind of flowing into something better than what we've ever imagined. And it is also getting from a very deep well of grace from the many experiences in life, that being one of them, one of the critical, important, pivotal ones, but certainly not the only one. And so for me, that's the unbecoming, is that leaning on trust and pulling from very deep well of grace that we build over time.
And trusting that you can hold that process as well, nature, right? As we're going through it.
Yeah.
There's some beautiful sharing in the chat, actually. Who would like to just share? Maybe Lisa, I see you've posted a few things in there.
No, I mean, I think it resonates on so many levels and examples as you guys are sharing. I think it's fantastic. And just what I'm getting overall is unbecoming can be a label, right? It could be unbecoming expectation. It could be a behavior. It could be a mindset. So however it shows up for each of us in our own story, appreciating and accepting that there is an unraveling happening. And I think that's the key thing, right? Is to accept it and allow it, to nature's point, to happen. So whatever that definition is for you, there's also a behavior around it about what to do with it, right? Because it happens as a process, but then for you as a person, what does that mean? So that was just my thought about seeing everything here and how it's all coming together as, for us, as one integrated, genuine human being at the end.
I think you nailed it with that word, right? Integrated. Like that, yeah, unbecoming, whatever that definition is for you, but it's just holding yourself with grace through a process, right? And just having that energy of both becoming and unbecoming, whatever that is for you. Yeah, thank you so much, Lisa, for that. Does anyone else feel called to share at this point in time?
Celia, I just wanted to pick up on what Lisa was saying.
Yeah, please.
For me, the mindset, the attitude, and the behavior is what arises in me is actually joyous fascination. It's like sometimes not joyous, right? But then certainly a fascination. And I find that to be one of the things also that we have as coaches is this fascination for life, for human experiences and stories. And yeah, and holding that kind of compassion and fascination for our own stories, because we hold it for so many people, but these unbecoming stories also teach us to hold it for ourselves, I feel. And yeah, so I just wanted to share that.
The other thing also that I wanted to add to that is the judgment that we sometimes place on it. You know, I think Jen made a comment about how we use this word. It's so unbecoming of you as a negative connotation, right? And yeah, absolutely, Lisa. It's honoring that instead, and just kind of knowing that, well, when I'm unbecoming, I'm actually going back to who I was intended to be, who I'm meant to be, and I've always been whole. I've always been whole, and I just need to realize what that means. And the unraveling is a necessary process, so that I get back to that part of me that was always there. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, I love that. I love also what Jenna said, because it's such a negative word, unbecoming, actually. You look it up in the dictionary. It's not something you want to be associated with in a sense, right? Yeah, beautiful. And thanks also, Bea, for sharing, realizing that you don't want to continue being who you were forced to be, right? There's also that element of pieces that have been placed on. And Chow, thank you also for sharing where you are at, in what space you are in this moment in time. And we hold that, it's all welcome, right? And yeah, Mia, permission, big word. Do we give ourselves even permission? I think, Jackie, that's when you speak to it with about judgment, right? Do we even give permission to ourselves to go through that process or to be with it, right? Big one. Sort of the last sort of question here, you know, how are you now continuing with this? Like, you know, we're coaches, we're human beings, we're individuals going through this process. You know, there's this belief sometimes out there that, oh, as coaches, you got all your stuff together. No, right? This is a continuous process. We're human beings as well. And so, you know, your story of becoming, unbecoming, how are you continuing this evolving, this unbecoming and becoming now?
I can start, Cecilia.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I know earlier I shared, that part of me, that the one that I'm missing when I had that, diagnosis is I talked about pilgrimage, right? Because I used to, lead pilgrimages pre-pandemic. So I will be joining, I'll be leading pilgrims, to specific, holy places, wherein we have itinerary agenda that that we will go through, or schedule that we will go through. There I realized that when you talk about pilgrims, we are all pilgrims of this world. No, you don't have to be a part of that formal pilgrimage group, but in reality right now in our life, our life is a pilgrimage, meaning we are journeying. So we are in a continuous journey, and we learn and unlearn from where we are at any point in our life. So I even remember nature. I remember you sharing this one with me way back then, when we had that, a chit chat there in Bali when we're attending the CMA mastery class. I remember you told me that I exude that kindness, to every pilgrim that I lead and encounter, because of course, I did not see that part in me. And that's my lesson for me now, no, as I continue to evolve, that becoming and unbecoming for me. The lesson for me is I have to be kind to myself as well. If I do exude kindness to others, then am I being kind to myself? So that's where I think Jackie mentioned that we have judgment. So it's given my strength as an achiever, tough, independent. So there's a tendency as well to judge myself if I'm not being that. So I need to be kind to myself in the unbecoming and becoming cycles of my own pilgrimage, my own journey. So it's in effect, when you talk about pilgrimage, it's really coming home to, well, in a spiritual sense, it's coming home to, going back to the heart of God, right? But here, there's another take on it. When you talk about pilgrimage, it's in effect coming home to yourself. So I need to come back to myself. And yeah, and I'm grateful. It's not only about me coming back to myself, but also coming home, no, to a safe haven, which we call Balay Haraya. So I know, Cecilia, maybe later on you can share with the group here. That Balay Haraya, remember Nature, Jackie and Cecilia, that came out also coming from that Bali trip. I clearly remember that's where it all started. And so it's been 2 years already, and we were able to, that Balay Haraya came into reality already. We were talking then about, we thought about, a physical house, a physical balay, but it turned out to be this whole thing, this space, the community that we're in right now. That's where we call Balay Haraya, and I'm grateful for that. It's also part of my pilgrimage now. I'm coming home not only to myself, but I'm coming home as well to my Balay family. Yeah, so that's for me, Cecilia, when you asked that question.
Yeah, Balay is home in Filipino. So in our company, we call our team and the space we have Balay Haraya. So people are able to come home there. And that's what I'm hearing from your story, right? Leo, from your sharing here, is like one holding self-compassion and kindness in our journey. And at the same time, finding a space where you can be yourself and be coming home too, right? And be in that journey with almost witnesses a little bit, and with people around you that provide that safety. What about Nature and Jackie? How are you continuing on this journey, and what do you kind of want to leave people with here? Jax, what about you?
It's an ongoing process, right? You go through a moment in time and you experience something really, really deep and really, really meaningful, and it changes you, it transforms you, or it helps you to go back to who you were in many different ways. And then you think, okay, I think I figured it out, right? And then not long after, you go through another thing and you get jolted again and wonder, okay, did I not learn what I was supposed to learn? Because this is, it still confuses me, it still pains me. So these situations that happen over the period of time will continue to happen. It's not going to end, right? I've come to accept the fact that I don't know where and how things will turn out for anything. I know what they are like for me today at the moment, and I know what I aspire for, what I would love to see happening, but I have no idea how it's all going to unfold. I have no idea. And I think what helps me to feel not so much comfortable with that, but confident in my ability to go through that, is having this this support system, right? So what Leah calls the balay haraya, having a family that will continue to support you in whatever mess you might be in, that will continue to accept and help you feel like you belong regardless of who you're being in the moment, and allowing all of that, warts and all. Yeah. So just knowing that, it becomes a source of huge strength for me.
Trusting the process and being held in your
Yes.
process.
Yes.
Right? Yeah, beautiful. I love also some of the sharing that's coming through
I
here.
know.
I'm a masterpiece and a work in progress at the same time. And truly believing that, right? Can we truly believe that about ourselves as well, and hold ourselves, and imagine if we are capable of holding that space, how beautiful of a space we can hold for our clients actually as coaches. Right? Nature, what about you as our last one here? How do you want to continue your journey? What do you want to share about that? And also what do you want to leave us with here?
Yeah, so for me, coming back into our role as woman beings and human beings, we are the holder and custodians of our stories. We are not our stories alone. We are the ones who experience the stories, and therefore, we are all here for it. And I love this quote from Ramdas: "We are all walking each other home." It speaks to the home that Cecilia, Jackie, Lay, you have been part of, that we have been creating, co-creating. And for me, that continues on with the journey. The stories will be many, might be very different in many phases in our lives. I wanted to speak a little bit as a woman who loves to collect roles, and I am still continuing to unravel that. What does that mean for me? But along those roles, for me, the journey is that I can choose who I am being, becoming, unbecoming, day by day and moment by moment. And I embrace all of that. And I continue to learn how to be compassionate with my choices and with my mistakes and my victories and joys along the way. And when I was young, as I share about that journey, I had a book. I was 12, so we're gonna go back to the beginning, right? Around holding those stories. And I had a book called I Am Becoming the Woman I Wanted. And of course, at 12, I had no idea what that meant. But I think now, I'm starting to understand what it means. And I'd like to share that with you and the rest of the people here in the room. If that's okay, Cecilia, maybe we can share this.
Yeah, sure. And then we'll also ask Chow to share after you've shared. Yeah. Jackie.
I am becoming the woman I've wanted. Gray at the temples, soft body delighted, cracked up by life with a laugh that's known bitter. But past it, got better. Knows she's a survivor, that whatever comes, she can outlast it. I am becoming a deep weathered basket.
I am becoming the woman I've longed for, the motherly lover with arms strong and tender, the growing up daughter who blushes surprises, I am becoming full moons and sunrises.
I find her becoming this woman I've wanted, who knows she'll encompass, who knows she's sufficient, knows where she's going and travels with passion.
Remembers she's precious, but knows she's not scarce. Who knows she is plenty, plenty to share.
Yeah, and so we hope that also through the stories and the sharing today, that's you also find inspiration around your own becoming journey here today, right? And become and unbecome the woman or the person that you would want to be. I also want to invite Chow, you have your hand raised to share with us.
Yeah, hi everyone. When I listen to on the story, I really resonate to each of you because I am like oldest sister in the family, and I also went through what nature shared earlier, and also I've been diagnosed with early state of liver sickness, which can lead to the liver cancer in the next 2 years. And through the treatment period, I also have the fears that Leah shared. So I really resonate to all the story that people sharing, and there was a picture that popped up in my mind when I listened to all the story until now. That was a woman wear a so big coat, and that's kind of like something that we were trained or taught or built up when we was younger, and we have to wear like something to cover us and to make us feel confident or doing something with our strength. But at some stage of the life, maybe we have to consider to take off the coat and to be ourselves, only ourselves, and stand on the ground, which is us, and accept all the things that come and let it go if it's over our capability. And yeah, I just want to share that picture that popped in my mind that can help us to stand on the ground and do something with more confidence. Yeah, that's it.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Chow, for sharing your story with us. And I think, yeah, thank you for bringing that in, because it's so important that we continue sharing our stories with one another and learn from it and get inspired and resonate, and also deeply feel that we're not alone and that there are people there that will hold space for us, right? For sure. Nature, Jackie, and Leah, is there anything else you want to say before we wrap this up today?
I guess nothing was left unsaid here. I'm loving all the reflection of our participants and attendees here. So I guess it was covered. It's really about embracing all of who we are here. I learned that from you, Cecilia, Nature, and Jackie. The mess and the it's combined. And that's what we're, as coaches, also we're trying to make our clients feel, right. They're whole. Nothing has to be fixed. They're whole together with the good and the bad in them. It's like the becoming and unbecoming as well in them. So that's part of the whole package. Yeah. Thank you everyone for sharing this space with us.
Jackie, Nature, anything you want to say to feel complete?
No, not really.
Good. Great. Some of the words that I really heard in the stories at the end was words like trusting the process, allowing, permission, grace, kindness, self-compassion, right? And so hopefully those are some of the gems and the nuggets that you bring and take away with you from our session today. we really wanted to create an experience of sharing and of what it does for us when we share our story and are witnessed by people as well and held, and the feeling of being held in your story. And so may you find your community that can hold and know that there's a community out there that does hold our unbecoming and becoming, right? So trust your process and embrace the energies of both becoming and unbecoming. So thank you for being here with us tonight, Jackie, Leah, and Nature. Thank you for being here and sharing your stories with us. And
Thank
so,
you. Thanks for
good
holding
night,
this
everyone.
space.
Have a beautiful
Yes.
rest of the day wherever you may be.
Thanks,
Thank you so
everyone.
much.
Thank you, everyone.
It's an honor.
Bye.